Today's video sponsor is GVG, where using my SKG discount code leads to a 25% off across several products, making a Windows 10 serial key only $16. After the payment, you'll receive the key in your account and all you need to do is to introduce it in your Windows settings and bam! You have an activated system. Hello guys, Asus Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel. So as for today's video, I bring you a new GPU comparison, this time including the RX 7900 XT. So we have the RX 6800 versus the RX 7900 XT versus the RX 7900 XTX. And I'm doing this comparison because instead of the RX 6800, it should be, or at least I wanted to have the RX 7900 XT or the RX 7950 XT, but I just couldn't. Because I'm still waiting AMD to actually send one of those, the 6900 XT or the 6950 XT, and they're searching on their Spain their Spain part of the company because they don't have these samples on the Spain part. Not the Spain part, it's called on their Spain headquarters or something like that. So they don't have those samples and they're searching for them, okay? If they can actually find one or not. Because I really wanted to make a video like that, but since I don't have any of those cards, the 6800 will have to suffice. And the point of this video is to actually show you which card performs better for the price as well, because prices, you may actually be watching the video right now, and prices will be one thing, but you may watch the video in 6 months or a year, and the prices will be different, okay? So I'm showing you the performance in order for you to choose which one is the better card for you to get. Okay, the 7900 XT or the 7900 XTX, depending on the price. And well, without any further delay, let's go to the part you came to see. The benchmarks.
He's going to catch us! Keep running!
Today's first game is Plague Tale Requiem, an exceptional but really heavy title at higher resolutions, even when using high settings. At 1080p, the RX 6800 can still achieve a pretty respectable number of 100 average FPS, which is more than enough for most people, with the RX 7900 XT achieving 163, and the RX 7900 XTX 179. At 1440p, the newer cards start getting a bit more ground over the RX 6800, with the RX 7900 XTX being almost twice as fast, and the 7900 XTX delivering a 65% performance uplift, which is nothing astonishing of course, but decent at least. At 4K, things follow the same path in terms of scaling, with the RX 6800 almost touching the 40 average FPS mark, the RX 7900 XT reaching a bit over 60, and the RX 7900 XTX pushing a bit further, delivering around 75, which is actually a very good result for this game. Now we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and starting at 1080p we have a mild CPU bottleneck, and that's why the RX 7900 XTX is only around 10% faster than its little brother. Although all GPUs can push over 140 average FPS here, which is outstanding. Raising the resolution to 1440p, the difference in between both the RX 7900 cards grows to 12%, with the RX 6800 being considerably slower but still delivering very good numbers. And even at 4K, it manages to deliver over 60 average FPS, which is a very decent experience, with both the newer cards beating the 100 average FPS mark. Cyberpunk 2077 is what we have now. At 1080p, the RX 7900 XTX delivers almost as many FPS in the 1% lows as the RX 6800 does in averages, which is quite insane if you ask me, with the RX 7900 XT delivering around 55 average FPS over it, which is less than I expected actually. At 1440p the difference gets much bigger in terms of percentage, but still something expected with the RX 7900 XT getting close to the 140 FPS mark and the RX 7900 XTX getting close to the 160. At 4K the RX 6800 takes a major blow and goes below half its 1440p performance, while the newer cards are able to sustain 4K quite better, both delivering over 70 average FPS. Now we have one of the best case scenarios, and it is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. In here, even at 1080p we have the RX 7900 XTX delivering double the performance of the RX 6800, which is where this card should sit at all times, and the RX 7900 XT being around 85% faster than the RX 6800 as well. Great results. Going to 1440p the scaling is exactly the same as 1080p, with the RX 6800 still delivering 102 average FPS, which is pretty respectable at 1440p extreme settings, and the RX 7900 XTX pushing over 200 average FPS. At 4K the RX 6800 stays on the 60 FPS line, while both newer gen cards deliver over 110. Amazing results. Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most CPU-dependent titles I've played recently. This, if you want to play with high refresh rates, of course. At 1080p, both the RX 7900 XT and XTX are heavily CPU bottlenecked, with the XTX having higher minimums due to being a stronger card, and even the RX 6800 is kind of bottlenecked in some parts of the benchmark, which is insane considering we have a Ryzen 7 7700X. At 1440p the CPU bottleneck is smaller, and that's the reason why Smart Access Memory now delivers a performance boost instead of reducing the performance like we saw at 1080p, with the RX 7900 XTX presenting way higher minimums than the XT variant. At 4K the bottleneck vanishes and we finally see the performance difference appearing, with the RX 7900 XTX being oddly faster than the RX 7900 XT, this while also delivering much higher 1% lows, which is something that did not happen in the previous games. Odd, but interesting. Forza Horizon 5 is one of the few games that is bugged on the new RX 7000 series GPUs. It seems that the aftermarket versions from Sapphire, PowerColor, XFX and etc. perform quite better in this game, as stated by some users. Still, AMD needs to fix this ASAP via drivers or firmware updates if needed, as it is absolutely inadmissible that an RX 7900 XT is actually performing worse than a lower tier card from the previous generation. What the hell is going on? Moving to 1440p, the results get better for the newer cards, but the RX 6800 is still outperforming the RX 7900 XT, which makes absolutely no sense. And at 4K, even though the RX 7900 XT is now faster than the RX 6800, it is still by only 16 average FPS, which puts these cards below the RX 7950 XT results, which once again makes no sense. Moving to a non-bugged game, we have Rainbow Six Extraction. This game uses Vulkan API and a pretty good engine, so even at super high FPS numbers, the CPU bottleneck is almost non-existent. This unless of course you're still running a Core 2 Duo with one of these cards, LOL. At 1080p as seen, the scaling is pretty okay, with the RX 7900 XTX delivering 50 average FPS more than the RX 7900 XT and 170 over the RX 6800. At 1440p, all cards deliver awesome results, even at ultra settings, with the RX 7900 XTX being the only card reaching the 300 average FPS mark. And at 4K, well, even the RX 6800 can deliver 80 average FPS, while the other two cards stay at 130 and 156.
Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Cessna 152 4 miles south.
Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is a much more CPU-intensive title than most people think, and that's exactly why you're seeing both the RX 7000 series cards getting virtually the same average FPS. It is also important to note that, at least with the current drivers, the RX 7900 XTX actually gets lower 1% lows while using Smart Access memory, while the RX 7900 XT gets a massive 1% lows boost when using it. Going to 1440p, we're still CPU bottlenecked when using the RX 7900 XTX, but now we have a small boost from Smart Access memory in terms of averages, while once again getting lower 1% lows. And even at 4K, where there's no CPU bottleneck at all, the RX 7900 XTX still loses FPS in the 1% lows when using Smart Access memory, which leads me to believe that AMD really needs to improve the drivers for this card, as this also happened with some 6000 series cards in the early days, but it is now fixed. Red Dead Redemption 2 is another example where the RX 7900 XT is once again delivering higher minimums or 1% lows than the XTX version, which shouldn't be happening at all. In fact, it is so idiotic that even at 1080p the RX 6800 delivers 66 average FPS less than the RX 7900 XTX, but only 10 FPS less in the minimums. And moving to 1440p makes it even worse, where the RX 6800 delivers higher minimums even though it delivers 62 average FPS less, which makes absolutely no damn sense. Moving to 4K, we finally have the RX 7900 XTX being better in all aspects, being also the only card delivering over 100 average FPS, with the RX 6800 still delivering an acceptable 60. The last game we have in terms of rasterization is God of War, which brought another interesting set of results. It seems that Smart Access memory is still not well optimized for the RX 7900 XTX in some titles somehow, while the RX 7900 XT is is perfectly fine. At 1080p we have a decrease of 30 FPS in the 1% lows, while we get an increase of 15 with the RX 7900 XT. Going to 1440p changes exactly nothing, with the RX 7900 XTX still losing performance and the RX 7900 XT still gaining it. Somehow. What? At 1440p ultra-wide we have absolutely nothing new as well, and it seems that in this game, at least with the current drivers, the RX 6800 has exactly no pros or cons from using smart access memory, the RX 7900 XTX gets lower FPS, and the RX 7900 XT benefits from it. To finish the rasterization part, we have the 10 games average presented in the 3 resolutions. Depending on where you live, the best price performance card will also be different. Usually in Europe, the AIB prices for the XTX are getting lower by the day, and in some cases you can actually get it for around 8% more than the XT version, and considering that the XTX can beat the XT version up to 20%, well, that makes the XTX the better card to get. On the other hand, if you can get a cheap RX 7900 XT, and you mostly play at 1440p or 1440p ultra-wide, the card can deliver up to 90% of the XTX's performance, while also consuming less power. And all I'm doing is showing you this data in order to make it easier for you to pick the card you want or the card you need. And well, rasterization is done, so let's go to ray tracing.
We're not from here either. Stellantis locked us up here a year ago.
The first ray tracing benchmark is with Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, which is and was the first game ever to be full RT based, meaning that you won't be able to even launch it unless your GPU supports hardware ray tracing. As for the results, they're strange. In some games the raster performance with the RX 7900 XTX is around double the performance of the RX 6800, and since RT cores were improved, the RT performance should be over double, and yet that's not the case. And although we get awesome results at 1080p and 1440p, not even the RX 7900 XTX is able to achieve 60 average FPS at 4K, which is quite disappointing. Moving to a ray tracing heavy game, we have Cyberpunk 2077, with all ray tracing options enabled and RT lighting at medium. This game only looks slightly better with RT activated, if you ask me of course, but the amount of power needed to run it is insane. The RX 7900 XTX was pushing 210 average FPS, but as soon as RT was activated, the numbers got reduced to 1/3. And even when using FSR, we barely breached the 100 FPS mark at 1080p. At 1440p it is even worse, with the performance with RT on being less than 1/3 of the performance with RT off. And even when using FSR, the best AMD card available in the market was barely hitting 75 FPS, which shows how poorly this game's ray tracing runs on the AMD side. Moving to Spider-Man Remastered, we have ray tracing now more on the CPU side, and now, although almost all GPUs were CPU bottlenecked at 1080p, ray tracing results show that the RX 7900 XT is slightly faster than the RX 6800, and the RX 7900 XTX somehow is considerably faster than both. And this makes no sense because as soon as we move up to 1440p, the RX 7900 XTX is only slightly faster than the RX 7900 XT, once again due to CPU bottleneck. And once we move up to 4K, where the CPU bottlenecks are almost non-existent, we have once again the XTX being quite faster than the XT, delivering 15 average FPS more, which in this case is around 21%, with the RX 6800 barely reaching 45 average FPS.
Brother!
These final benchmarks are oriented towards upscaling technologies like FSR, DLSS and XeSS. I actually had to remake these tests on the RX 7900 XTX with the newer drivers, as with the previous ones I was getting no performance uplifts whatsoever when using FSR. In some cases, I was even getting less performance than native, which obviously made absolutely no sense and was a driver issue. With the newer ones, even though we were CPU bottlenecked with the RX 7900 XTX, we still got a mild performance uplift, most importantly in the 1% lows, with the RX 7900 XT actually delivering better performance due to a non-broken SAM implementation. And the same happens at 1440p ultra-wide, where the RX 7900 XT delivers way higher 1% lows and very close average FPS when using FSR, with the RX 6800 also being able to achieve around 100 average FPS when using the upscaler. To finish the benchmarks, we have once again Spider-Man Remastered, and even at 1440p we have absolutely no performance gains with the newer cards due to CPU bottlenecks, being the RX 6800 the only one benefiting a bit. Also interesting to note that the RX 7900 XT seems to actually perform worse with Intel's XeSS than it does natively, while that does not happen on the XTX. And if you thought it was maybe a mistake, well, it wasn't. At 4K, where the bottlenecks get way lower or almost non-existent, the RX 7900 XT performs quite better than the RX 7900 XT, as it should, with XeSS delivering a mild performance uplift compared to native, once again as it should, while it actually delivers slightly lower performance than native on the RX 7900 XT. Again. And it seems to not be something just related to these new cards, as even the RX 6800 gets only a mild performance uplift when using XeSS, but a much bigger one when using FSR. And well, with all said and done, let's move to the conclusion. So as for the conclusion, guys, since we actually had the full picture, or at least I tried to bring you the full picture, hence the name being full GPU comparison, we have rasterization results, we have ray tracing results, we have even upscaling results, so FSR, DLSS if there was any NVIDIA card, and even XeSS from Intel. Now, in my opinion, the three cards perform very well. The 6800 non-XT is an exceptional card for the price you can get one right now. And if you go to the used market, it is an even better card, because you can get one as cheap at let's say $350 or even less than that, and the card performs exceptionally well inside a very good power draw limit, okay? Inside the 250 watts power draw, you can get an exceptional card, and it is the RX 6800 that performs okay-ish in terms of ray tracing performance and very good in terms of rasterization performance. As for the newer cards, well, it depends on where you are. The better buy depends once again on where you live, because, let me just get this, because for example on USA you can get the reference XTX for $999, so $1,000, and an AIB XTX for $1,099, so $100 over the reference version. If we go to the actual XT model, we have the reference XT for $869 and the AIB XT for $879 from XFX, so it's a no-brainer. Unless you absolutely have no space on your case, you'll just go to the AIB version because of a much better cooling solution. If we go to Europe, for example Portugal, where I live, you can actually find the reference XTX for 1100 euros, let's say. As for the AIB XTX, you can get one for the minimum price of $1,219, okay, which is the Pulse edition, and you can get for $1,299 the Red Devil one, which in my opinion is well worth it, okay? Going from the Pulse to the Red Devil, you have lots of things on top of that, lots of things. You have more accessories, the case is better, also the temperatures will be better, the noise levels will be better as well. Overall it will be a much better solution, and you'll pay around 80 euros more, okay? As for the reference XT, we can get one for 1,000 euros, 999, and the AIB XT we can get one for 1,069 euros, which is the Hellhound version, and 1159 euros, which is the Red Devil version. Once again, we can get one for 90 euros more. We go from the Hellhound, which is the lower tier solution from PowerColor, to the highest tier solution from PowerColor, which is the Red Devil, for 80 euros difference, okay? Now, as you can see, there's a thing, and the thing is that On USA, if you can actually find an XTX, because it seems to be out of stock in almost everywhere, while in Portugal we have lots of XTX models being sold actually on the shelves yet. On USA, you actually need $220 more if you want to go from the AIB XT to the AIB XTX, so $220 more over the cards, and $220 more is a lot of money. You can get a CPU with that, you can get more RAM, you can get a better NVMe, so there's a lot of things that you can do with $220, which is one of the things that makes you kind of stay in between both cards, okay, the XT and the XTX, because $220. If you want a card for the max performance, the XTX is the way to go. But if you want to save a little money and actually get a card that performs really close to it, while saving some money for a better processor, a better RAM kit, a better NVMe, then the XT is definitely the way to go, because you can spend up to $220 or 160 euros. And I mean, that money can actually allow you to get, once again, a better processor, and so on, so on, so on. So it's up to you, but overall, the XT is usually the best way to go. Usually. At least for the day that I'm making this video. And well guys, with all said and done, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video, because that really helps a lot. Don't forget, follow me on YouTube, subscribe, like, blah blah blah. Follow me on Twitter if you want to as well, and I even have a Discord channel where I'm not there 99% of the times, sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next video.